tech sales, you know just as well as I, whale hunting isn't going to work. You're going to end up losing to the reps who use one of the 5 plays I'm about to teach you. And the 5 plays that I'm going to walk you through are strategic enterprise plays that helped me break through $500,000 in tech. And it's helped hundreds of reps that I've worked with both as a CRO, as a sales leader, now a full-time sales coach and consultant, help them add a significant amount to their commissions. It's going to make it a lot easier for you, reduce the stress, and give you a lot of clarity. Because the truth is, most reps never hit 500K. Not because they're lazy, not because they're dumb, but because they're running mid-market plays in the enterprise world, and they're not the same. I became number 1 at Salesforce in 4 different roles from SMB to mid-market enterprise using systems that make revenue predictable. All right, let's get into it. So play number 1, we're selling risk mitigation, not excitement. So as human beings, every single one of us does everything that we do for one of 2 reasons. I'm either running towards pleasure or running away from pain. And the truth is, we're biologically more wired to run away from pain versus towards pleasure. 99% of your enterprise buyers are no different. They're not looking for the sexy, most exciting option. They're going to aim for the options that are going to increase the likelihood of them getting promoted, de-risk the decision, because people don't get fired for picking the safe bet. So it's going to go into their decision makings because they need to defend their decisions. And they're going to operate under the assumption that there is a likelihood that the technology that they implement is not going to work. So if you're trying to really increase your level of trust with your buyers, stop focusing on all the upside, start focusing on the risk mitigation. And here's how the best enterprise reps do that. First, they lead with what they know the buyers are trying to avoid. So instead of jumping straight into a pitch, I'll ask something like, when you think about the next 12 to 24 months, what happens if nothing changes? And then a follow-up will be, what's the risk of keeping your current system as is for that 12 to 24 months? And now what this does is this gets them talking about risk in their own words, not yours. And that gives you a really solid foundation to build your discovery and evaluation off of. Now, second, what I want you to do is you're going to name the 4 risks that they're silently thinking about, but they're never going to tell you. And the first is implementation risk. Is this going to disrupt the business? Second is security and compliance risk. Is this going to create exposure for us? Third is timeline risk. Are we still going to be implementing this a year from now? And fourth is career risk. If this fails, am I the person that's going to get canned for this? And in my head, I'm always thinking through those 4 because I know the buyer is. They just won't say it out loud. So that's why I always call it out first, and I encourage you to do the same. And then third, you're going to think about turning your features, not into benefits, but into certainty. Because most reps are going to say, hey, here's what our product can do. Here's what our solution can do. Here's all the benefits of it. Well, what a true killer rep who knows it's all about de-risking the decision for the buyer, what they'll say is, look, here's how we're going to help you roll this out without the chaos, without the disruption. It's going to put them at ease. Or here's how we validate value in phases so you're not betting the farm on this. Again, de-risking the decision. Or they'll say, hey, here's how we keep the scope under control so this doesn't turn into a never-ending project, which you know they're worried about. And by doing this, you're not selling buttons. You're not trying to jam anything down their throat. You're aligning with them and you're calling out the concerns that they have proactively to increase that level of trust. Because without trust, nothing else matters. Because what you're ultimately selling is, hey, this isn't going to blow up in your face. And then after you do this is where I go into the 4th part of it, which is outlining a clear path instead of focusing on a big pitch. So I'll literally say something like, look, the safest way to do this is we start with a contained pilot with just your sales team. What we're going to do is we'll prove value there, right? Just to make sure this can deliver on the promise, which of course I'm confident in, but I need to make sure you feel comfortable too. And then from there, we can expand once there's internal proof points and we have enough champions on board. And then and only then am I going to recommend that we go broader. So we're going to start small, set clear milestones along the way, and we're only going to scale after we've proven value and the alignment between the buyer and the seller is real. And then finally, we're going to help make sure the decision is easy for them to defend internally, because I want my champion to be able to defend their decision to the CFO, to the COO, or even the CEO. I want them to say with confidence that, hey, we aligned on stakeholders. We aligned on the success criteria. We aligned on the rollout steps. This was not a rush decision. It's not a gamble. I see this as a methodical way to solve a problem with very little downside. And when you can help them show up like that, you're going to stop being the vendor. You're going to become the partner and that trusted advisor that we all know and what everyone who works in enterprise sales is always trying to become. All right, so that's play number 1. Play number 2, most champions aren't real. One of the fastest way to kill your shot at performing at a high level, at consistently closing those big deals to help you increase your results is mistaking someone who is a coach or an influencer for a real champion. A champion in enterprise is not the person who likes you the most. It's the person who can move people, who can navigate the process and keep momentum when politics show up. So let me give you a quick story. I remember when I was at Salesforce, I once spent 6 months on a deal where my champion loved us. She said all the right things. We did custom demos, security reviews, a full POV, and then the deal died overnight because a VP that I'd never met decided to go with a competitor that he'd worked with before. The truth is, like, that was on me. I had a fan, but I never real champion. So here's how I qualify champions now. So the first question I need to validate is, have they led a purchase like this internally before? Because if they haven't, they can still be helpful, but they can't really be your only threat in the business. You need someone who's actually walked a 6-figure or even 7-figure deal through their org, through signature. Second, can they bring other stakeholders in within a reasonable window? Because if you're multiple calls in and it's still just you and one person, that's a major red flag. There's multiple stakeholders in the deals. You know just as well as I, big deals have a bunch of stakeholders. And a real champion understands that enterprise decisions are truly team sports. So they'll say, hey, we need to make sure we loop in finance. Hey, we need to make sure my VP or the COO is involved in the next meeting because they're going to be critical to help move the deal forward. Or they'll say, hey, I know the director of IT is going to be really skeptical. Here's how we need to think about working with them. Which leads me to the third point, which is, hey, do they actually understand the internal buying process? So a question that I'll ask is, hey, walk me through what has to happen between, hey, this looks good and we're going to sign and then we're live. Like, who needs to sign what? Where do deals usually get stuck? Help me understand that. Because if they can't explain the steps in detail, who needs to approve what by when? What does the timing look like? How long does it take to get things done? Or who are going to be the skeptics? Then all you're really doing is completely guessing when you're building your deal execution plan. And then the fourth thing is, are they asking for you to do a bunch of work, but not giving you access to the right people? Because if someone wants trials, proof of concepts, point of views, custom demonstrations, want to do deep security reviews, they want to do all of that, but they're not willing to bring in power, not going to introduce you to legal, not going to really help you navigate the competitors in the situation. Like, if they're not willing to open up around what's going on in their org, this isn't a champion. Like, that's a problem in your deal. So what I'll literally say is, look, I'm happy to invest in a point of view, but for it to be worth it on both sides, we need to make sure that the right people are involved. Otherwise, there's a significant risk that a lot of time and resources being wasted on both of our sides. So I just want to make sure before we get too deep into this process, we get aligned on what the true North Star of the project is. So the fifth way I qualify champions is, can they map resistance and create a path to power? A real champion can tell you where the pushback's going to come from, where are the landmines, where are the skeletons in the closet. They're going to call out the worries about integrations. They're going to call out procurement and the terms that they're going to negotiate. They're going to call out that, hey, the COO worked with X vendor before. So it's going to be really critical that you speak to that and your unique differentiators. What they're going to be able to do is help you build a real path to the decision maker and how to win over the decision maker. What they're not going to do is say, yeah, eventually we'll get there, or after the trial, we could set something up. No, they're going to get that person in now because they want you to win. So here's a simple mental scorecard that I use when I'm trying to qualify champions. So if they can't bring in other stakeholders, can't explain the process, and can't create a path to power, they're not a champion. They're just an enthusiast, which is good, but it's not a champion, and you need a champion to win big deals. And when you qualify champions this way, what's going to happen is you're going to stop running into landmines and you're going to stop getting blindsided in your deals. A quick note before we jump into the next play. Now, if you're watching this and you realize, like, yeah, like, I'm definitely guilty of some of this, and you want help installing enterprise plays just like this into your territory so you can increase the likelihood that you break through those income levels that we're all talking about, there's a link in the description to book a call with my team. What we'll do is we'll look at your pipeline, your skill gaps, your current systems, and what we'll do is we'll show you where we believe you're leaving money on the table and our recommendation on how to fix it. All right, now let's get back to it. Play number 3, top down versus bottom up. So bottom up is going to fill your calendar. Top down fills your W-2. So bottom up feels good because someone's willing to talk to you. I know this feeling, especially when I was early in my career. I always felt like I was making friends in the organization. They always want to jump on calls, and I loved it because I felt busy, but I wasn't productive. Because enterprise deals don't close just because someone's interested and want to talk to you. They close because the right people are aligned. The risk is managed, and there's a clear path through the org to help them understand how this is going to help them move their business forward. So here's how I think about it. Top down is ideal because it solves 2 big problems early. First, you're going to get clarity on what the real priorities are instead of guessing on what matters. Because when you talk to a VP or C-level early, you're going to hear, hey, these are our top 3 initiatives this year. Nothing else matters. Or here's what we actually have budget for. And here's where this sits on our priority list, right? You're going to stop pitching nice to haves. You're going to start aligning to real outcomes. Now, second, you're going to reduce the odds of a late stage surprise stakeholder that just completely resets the clock in your deal. And then you end up blowing your forecast. And we've all been there. I know this myself. Imagine this. Like, you're in a deal. Suddenly someone new joins that says, hey, why are we even do this? Like, now you're starting from zero again and you just want to blow your brains out. Top-down conversations early in your deal drastically reduce that risk. Now, bottom-up can still be useful, but only if you use it for the right purpose. Use bottom-up to understand how the work actually gets done. That's going to help you really uncover like the real pain in the trenches, the real constraints, to help you really learn who within the org is going to resist change, and more importantly, why they're going to do that. And then what's really helpful, and I love to do this, is pick up on the specific language that they use so that you're mirroring that language when you're meeting meeting with the leadership team. Now, where bottom up becomes dangerous is when it becomes your entire strategy. So here's what that looks like. You've had 4 great calls with a manager who loves you. They want to do a trial. They want to prove it out, but they won't involve leadership, or they can't explain approvals or timing. And they keep saying, look, let's just get started, you and I, then we'll pull them in. Or the dreaded words that say, look, just work with me for a bit. We'll get started with it. Then later on, I'll pull them in. And look, you're going to get real busy doing this. You're going to be doing a lot of work, but you're not going to be productive because the deal isn't actually moving toward a decision. So the clean way to run through this and avoid this altogether is you use bottom up for learning and then demand top down for decisions. So here's something that I'll say to try to thread the needle. If we're going to do this properly, what we need is alignment with your executive team, and we need to get them aligned early. So number one, we're not surprising them later. And then number two, we're not running into the risk that this becomes a failed implementation. And if that happens, that could put egg on your face and mine. And I know neither of us wants that to happen. So how can we make that happen to get that alignment? If they fight you on that, that tells you right now that this is not a real deal in your pipeline. When you push top down early or you run bottom up with clear boundaries, what's going to happen is you're going to stop living in that danger zone where deals look good on paper to you, but in reality, it's just a house of cards. Play number 4, disqualify earlier when access is blocked. A lot of reps miss out on getting a President's Club, breaking through that $500,000 mark, whatever that income level is, because they stay loyal to deals that aren't loyal to them. People in mid-management and enterprise deals, they're going to happily let you run meetings forever if you allow it, because there's so many stakeholders that get all the time in the world. But your loyalty can't be to them. Your loyalty has to belong to your number and your family, not a prospect that keeps stringing you along. So you have to be willing to establish boundaries and disqualify earlier when access is blocked in your deals. So here are the signals that I treat as major red flags and landmines to avoid in your deals. First is the stakeholders are being withheld. So if you're asking things like, hey, who else needs to be involved, and you're not getting any clarity and nothing's changing, the truth is you're being boxed out. Real enterprise deals, they expand the stakeholders' involvement over time. Now you need to earn that expansion, but either way, you're not staying stuck with one contact forever. Second, they want a pilot or a trial or a point of view, and you doing a bunch of heavy lifting before you can get executive alignment. But the truth is, if they won't align stakeholders and the success criteria first, the trial just becomes a fancy science project and wastes everyone's time. So what I'll say early is like, look, I'm completely open to a pilot, but in order to do that, first we need to align on who needs to be involved and how we're going to measure success. Otherwise, this just becomes extra work for both of us. If they resist that, this isn't a real deal, and I'm treating it as a deal that's not in my pipeline and certainly not going to go on my forecast. Third is the buying process stays vague. If they can't walk you through approvals, steps, and timing, you're not in an evaluation. They're still in research mode. And research mode doesn't pay you. Now, I'm not saying you avoid it altogether, but you have to allocate your time accordingly. Fourth is calls repeat without progression. Every call feels like a good conversation, but no new stakeholders, no concrete next step, no real movement or decision. That's just fake momentum. Fifth, criteria feels very one-sided or positioned against you. If the evaluation is rigid in a way that just happens to favor a competitor and they can't explain why the criteria matters, odds are the decision's already made and they already chose that vendor, but they're just going through the process so that they could check the boxes internally when their CEO asks them, hey, did you do your due diligence? They could say, yes, boss, I did. I looked at vendor X, Y, and Z is best, even though Z was the guy all along. So you need to disqualify that. But just to be clear, like disqualifying your deals doesn't mean you're being rude. It just means you're being direct. So what I've literally said is, look, I'm happy to keep going here, but for this to be worth it for both sides, we need stakeholder alignment in a clear process. Now, if we can't get that, it's probably better just to pause so we're not wasting each other's time. Now, here's the important part. Every time I've said that, one of two things happen. Either doors open, they get serious, bring in the right people, clarify the process, or the deal quickly dies. Here's the best part. Both outcomes are wins, because yeses are great, nos are good, maybes suck. And this gets you out of maybe land, because when you disqualify faster, your pipeline gets cleaner. And suddenly you now have capacity to build pipeline that can actually close, and you're allocating more of your time towards the real deals that are in your pipeline. Play number 5, strategic enterprise prospecting. In enterprise, you don't win by touching logos because you only have 10, maybe 20 accounts to really penetrate deep into to help you blow out quota. So what you can't do is run SMB or even mid-market plays to try to break in. Here's how I think about strategic enterprise prospecting. First, you have to prioritize viability before activity. So before I try to approach an account, what I'm really trying to do is ask myself, number one, is there a clear use case where we've won before that looks identical to what this company's trying to achieve? And then 2, is there a realistic path to get to power in this org, or how can I build that path? Because if the answer is no to either of those questions, well, all I'm doing is just wishing. And I'm going to put a bunch of activity into my CRM, look busy, but I'm not actually going to generate. So I need to get clear on that so that I could really be effective at how I approach that account. And second, I work the parent company and then around the edges. So many times the main organization moves really slowly, but a subsidiary, a region, or an adjacent business unit, they're going to move much faster, most likely. The way I've been able to break into Fortune 500 accounts or just big enterprise accounts in general is by starting with a single region, nailing that, and then turning it into a proof point, and then elevating that win to corporate or to the executive team for the larger business. And then third, what I like to do is I like to create multiple entry points on purpose. Because when you look at a big account, it can seem overwhelming, but there's always kinks in the armor. So I want to look for at least 3 to 4 different threads that I could try to pull on and break into. Because one thread is going to have significant risk. But if I have multiple threads, then I have significantly less risk into really trying to break in. So I'm looking at threads associated to business outcomes. So how can I help them increase revenue, reduce their cost, increase efficiency? Another thread I'm looking into is the technical aspect or security. Because these are the people that if we can't check those boxes, they're going to kill the deal. So I got to make sure I'm working that thread on its own. And then another thread I'm looking at is operations or implementations. Like these are the people that actually live with this day to day. So I got to make sure they feel good about it. So I'm treating each of these as basically its own type of deal cycle to reduce the risk of this deal. Because in enterprise, there's so many more variables at play. And if you don't nail one of them, if you don't treat them as individual sales cycles within the larger umbrella, it's just going to increase the likelihood that your deal stalls or dies. Now, fourth, what I'm going to measure my prospecting success by is by access gained into the account, not my emails sent. Most reps, they'll measure their prospecting by dials, emails, and touches. Don't get me wrong, inputs drive outputs, but what I care about more is, did I add a new stakeholder to the conversation? Did I learn something meaningful about their process or priorities? I had a client of mine recently where I was reverse engineering his path to success, and we're looking at his KPIs. And he's like, Justin, calling doesn't seem to be effective for me. So what I asked him is like, hey, you do a bunch of different activities to try to build pipeline, and you're selling into big accounts. Like for context, this person's selling 7, 8, even 9-figure deals. And I asked him, I said, point blank, what's the number one thing that you do to create projects in your accounts? And he said, golf. And I said, tell me more. He said, every time I have a strategic tee time at a beautiful course, I'm able to get an executive on the tee time with me. And then through those 5 hours on the golf course, there's always something that I uncover with the accounts. So I said, great. I don't want you cold calling. I don't want you emailing. I don't want you sending messages on LinkedIn. I want you golfing because that's the path of least resistance. That is a success metric for you to build pipeline. So by thinking about that and you aligning that success metric to making sure that you're driving meaningful activity in your accounts, that's going to move the needle. Because as I said a second ago, it's not about the activity. It's about, do we make progress in our accounts? And in that rep's instance, the way he made meaningful progress was being on the golf course. And I'm a golfer, so frankly, I was a little jealous. I just want to give you that example of something to think about. Don't automatically assume your path to pipeline is just blindly picking up the phone. And when you prospect like this and you think about prospecting differently, enterprise selling is going to stop feeling like you're whale hunting. And it feels like you're almost gambling. It's going to feel like you're actively working a portfolio that you're methodically working through and deliberately building on. It's going to feel more like a methodical system that's helping you effectively exhaust all potential in your accounts. So just to recap the 5 plays that will significantly increase the odds that you significantly increase your results, help you break through that $500,000 mark that so many people in enterprise tech sales want to get to. Number 1, you're going to sell risk mitigation, not excitement. Number 2, know that most champions aren't real and know how to qualify them. Number 3, knowing how to top-down sell versus bottom-up selling. Number 4, disqualify early in your deals when those red flags arise. And then number 5, understanding strategic enterprise prospecting. And these are some of the plays that I use to help me get to number 1 at Salesforce. Help me become a CRO at 33 and become one of the top CROs in tech by 34. So I want you to use these. I want you to implement them because I've now taught these systems to hundreds of reps over the last decade, both as a sales leader and now as a sales coach. You have folks like Alex who went from 60 to 120% quota attainment in 3 months by leveraging some of this. Brett used some of this to become number 1 out of 80 reps at Salesforce, right? Like none of that happened because of one magic opener or one lucky whale. It happened because they installed systems just like this to help them methodically work their territories to reduce their stress and increase their clarity so that they can be productive and not just busy. Now, shameless plug, if you want help installing these systems into your territory, click the link in the description, book a call with our team. We'll look at how you're running things today, identify what's missing, and then map out a plan to help you make this year your big breakout year without relying on that big whale. Now, if you found this helpful, big ask, like this video, drop a comment with which play you're going to implement, and then subscribe for more simple, practical playbooks to help you win at tech sales. My name's Justin. Build systems, not stress. I'll see you in the next video.